My son hugged me at the door and told me it would only be for a week, just a week. His wife stood a few steps behind him, smiling. But it was the kind of smile people use when they're trying too hard, the kind meant to convince, not comfort. I noticed it, but I ignored the feeling it gave me. They said her father had been in a serious accident, that he was in a coma, that he needed someone older, someone patient, to sit with him while they took a short trip to handle things. I believed them, not because the story felt right, but because I wanted to believe my own family. When their car pulled away and the house finally went quiet, something shifted. The silence felt heavier than it should have. I remember standing there for a moment, listening, as if the walls themselves were waiting. I walked back to the guest room to check on the man they said could not wake up. I was humming softly, the way I do when my nerves need calming. That's when his fingers moved, just slightly. Then his eyes opened, not fully, not with strength, but enough to see me. And when he spoke, his voice was thin and cold, like air slipping through a cracked window. He whispered for help before I could even speak. He said something that stopped my breath, because he wasn't talking about his pain. He was talking about mine. He told me they were keeping him drugged, that he could hear everything, that he had heard them talking about my money. I stood there frozen, looking at a man who was not in a coma at all, and I felt the air in the room change. It felt like the house itself had been holding a secret and was finally letting it breathe. I wanted to call my son, to run after him, to demand answers, but the word money sat in my stomach like a stone because it meant the danger wasn't just in that bed. It was in my chest. I leaned closer and asked him what he meant. His eyes flicked toward the door, as if he expected someone to come rushing in at any moment. He told me about the pills, how they slowed his body but left his mind awake, how he was trapped behind his own eyelids, able to hear conversations meant for someone who was never supposed to speak again. I asked him to blink if he understood me. He blinked once, and in that moment, I knew I was standing inside something far darker than a family favor. I placed myself between the bed and the doorway, not because I thought I could stop anyone, but because the room had become a secret. And secrets are dangerous when they're spoken too loudly. As I adjusted the blanket, using the same careful motions they had shown me and praised, a quiet shame rose in my chest. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I had trusted without asking hard questions. My name is Pearl. I've lived long enough to see people change, to see love turn quiet and promises turn into habits. But I never imagined I would see my own son bring a lie into my home and lay it down like something harmless. I raised him in New York, in a small apartment where the radiator sang in winter and the street never truly slept. I worked the kind of jobs that leave your feet aching and your hands rough because I wanted him to grow up safe. Taught him one thing clearly: when someone is weak, you protect them, you speak for them, you stand between them and harm. That's why when he asked me to come for a week, I didn't hesitate. And he knew that his wife, had always been polite, charming even, but there were moments when her eyes felt distant, like she was listening for advantage instead of understanding. I told myself I was imagining it, told myself I was being old-fashioned, but standing beside that bed, watching a grown man struggle through drugged breath just to warn me, all my excuses fell apart. Went to the kitchen cabinet they had shown me on the first day. The bottles were lined up neatly, like they belonged there. Some had names, some didn't. Some labels were peeling, as if questions were never meant to be asked. One bottle made my stomach tighten. The medication was strong, too strong, not something given lightly. This wasn't care. It was control. When I returned to the room, he was trying to stay awake, fighting to remain present. And something inside me settled into resolve. I told him help was coming. Not later. Not when it was convenient. Right now. I stepped into the hallway, closed the door just enough to hear the machine beside him, and I called 911. I spoke calmly, the way you do when you're trying not to frighten yourself. When the sirens came, I felt both relief and grief, because I knew that once they arrived, there would be no returning to the version of my family I once believed in. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what my heart already knew. He had been overmedicated, sedated, silenced. Social worker asked me to start from the beginning, not the medical details, but the family ones. Who brought him into the house? Who left? Who controlled the pills? A police officer listened to the recording on my phone. When the weak voice said, "Help me." I am not in a coma. I watched certainty settle into his face. Certainty is heavy when it carries a family's truth. Later, when I saw the man again, he reached for my hand as if he needed proof that someone had finally heard him. He whispered, "Thank you." Then he told me everything. How money went missing, how he was told he was confused, how pills appeared even when he refused them. He heard my son and his wife talking late at night about control, signatures, guardianship, about how easy it is to make an older person look incapable. And then he said something that broke my heart all over again. They talked about using me because I was dependable, because I wouldn't cause trouble, because I would do what I was told if it sounded like care. That's when I understood. They didn't just plan to take from him. They planned to borrow my love and turn it into a weapon. When the police secured the house and the calls started coming, I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself. I told the truth because good people don't call the truth a ruin. Only plans do. Thank you for listening to my story. If it stayed with you, then it was meant to.